which stands for Edinburgh Parallel Computing Centre. So we're part of the University of Edinburgh. So what I'm going to do today is I'll just take you through a little bit about EPCC and our advanced computing facility in the ACF, which is on the outskirts of Edinburgh. Tell you a little bit about what we have there. I'll talk a little bit about the current services that we have in EPCC and around the UK. So for those that are not familiar with the services available to you, hopefully you'll get an idea. And then I'll talk a little bit about future services that are coming up within the UK. It's been quite uncertain for quite a while, but there has now been some concrete action and concrete things funded. So I'll say a little bit about that. So first of all, EPCC, we were established in 1990. We originated from the physics department here in the university. We've got around 140 staff working across the centre, and while our facilities are out on the edge of Edinburgh, you may recognise the pictures that our offices are based on the second floor of this building here. We run a number of systems which I'll talk about later on, and we span activities relating to traditional HPC type work and research, to AI and data science, and through to some quantum applications. And we host the Edinburgh International Data Facility. So having started from high performance computing services, things like the Archer 2, we've diversified into data driven services as well. Just going back through a little bit of the history. So one of the first machines, the first main parallel machines run here in Edinburgh was the ICL DAP system. And that was before EPCC was formed. But that started a train of large-scale HPC resources that have continued throughout the last however many years. I just picked up some of my favourite ones in the group. The one to your further side is the connection machine. It was quite an interesting system at the time, and actually it appeared in Jurassic Park as well. They were using one of them for Jurassic Park. It was interesting in that it was actually designed to do artificial intelligence, but very quickly became a system used for computational science. So it was ahead of its time. The next one is the Cray T3D, which was the UK National Service, a really big system used by scientists from both EPSRC, the Engineering Science Research Council, and also from PPARC, the predecessor to STFC. The one in the middle is the Blue Gene P system, actually. We had a series of these systems at EPCC, starting with what was called QCDOC, which was a purpose-built system for quantum chromodynamics. There was an academic from Edinburgh involved in that, and we had a Blue Gene L as well. Hector was a very large machine, very large national resource used by EPSRC, which led to Archer, which has now led to Archer 2, the current system. But if you're interested, there's a timeline on our website which tells you about all the different machines. So the Advanced Computing Facility, this is our data centre. It's based out at the Bush Estate. So if you don't know where that is, most of you will probably have heard of Dolly the sheep. So it's on the same site as that, and also as the vet school. So the picture here shows you, it goes right back to the 1970s when there was when we had the Edinburgh Regional Computing Centre. That actually made it into a Ladybird book, which is the image you're seeing there. And this was originally composed of the area that's now our offices, a plant room and 2 computer rooms, computer room 1 and 2. Those have all been refurbished, but the computer rooms are still in operation and used to host the Edinburgh International Data Centre and various other resources. The university later leased it out to Diageo before bringing it back to the university. In the early 2000s, this was converted to an HPC data centre. It was recommissioned and reconfigured in 2004. When Hector came along, we ended up adding a new plant room to support this and installing Hector in 2006. So as you can see, there's a new machine room added on here to this picture. So that is machine room 3. And then we later on gained the Archer service, which went into CR3 as well in 2012. More recently, we've had Computer Room 4. Computer Room 4 was funded through the DDI programme, the South East Scotland City Regional Deal. And so we have a new plant room and a compute room. And as you can see, it's the extra addition added on here. There's quite a long corridor there. You'll see in the middle there's a tree roundel. So we were required to keep it, but actually it's a very nice area that we use for staff to enjoy. So, but that is the reason that there's quite a distance between the new machine room and the old ones. So that also brought in 30 megawatts of additional power to the site. So that was us preparing for exascale. Prior to that, we had around 8 megawatts of power coming on site. So just to tell you a little bit about Archer 2, this is the current UK national service. It delivers science within, or it's used by scientists to deliver research in EPSRC and NERC's remit. So that's the Engineering and Science Research Council and the Natural Environment Research Council. It was £79 million worth when it was opened in 2021, and as with many of these systems, it's running and will continue to run for quite some time. It's currently due to finish in November 2026. And I'll come back to that when I talk about the next services. So it's a very large CPU-based system and is heavily used. I think in my next slide, I talk about one of the main things that we have in the UK is that we have a really high demand for the services that we offer. So we have around 6,000 users. Our usage sits consistently at around 90%. And anything beyond that is hard to actually schedule. So there's a lot of demand for it. When we first turned this machine on, it took 24 to 48 hours for it to be up to that kind of capacity. So it does show you the sort of demand that's out there for these resources. Having worked on delivering the service, things that have changed from the start of it is sustainability has become a real issue or a real concern in this area. We obviously use a lot of power on site. And so there is obviously consideration as to what that's doing for emissions and is there value, are we getting enough value for the emissions that we're using? If you're interested, we have done quite a lot of work in this area, but it's worth noting that obviously living in Scotland, there's a lot of green energy, and actually the amount of the energy usage that we have or the power coming onto site is primarily green energy. But we have done a lot of work around trying to reduce our energy emissions and also our actual emissions. One of the other things that has been associated with Archer and also with Archer 2 is we had a significant amount of money to fund a series of calls to allow RSEs, research software engineers, to develop and work on application codes on Archer 2. So we expanded that, or we were given funding to expand that to focus on GPU-based systems, at which point our calls were very heavily oversubscribed. And this is another area that's an issue in the UK at the moment, particularly as the type of architecture that we're going to have in the future services is changing. We have a community that's growing, that's expanding, but also a community that isn't as prepared for the use of GPU-based systems. We're moving from a CPU-based system to a large GPU resource. Worth talking a wee bit about Cirrus. Cirrus is a machine that we've had at EPCC for quite a while. It was originally bought by us for our industry work, but became a tier 2 service within the UK. So this is for scientists who maybe don't quite require the same level of compute resource that Archer 2 provides, but still need something that goes beyond the availability of their local systems. This is actually, it's not really an upgrade, it's a completely new system. It's currently in the process of being replaced. The image at the bottom is the new machine, and we're currently testing it at the moment, and it's likely to open to users in December 2025. And again, I'll mention the funding associated with tier 2 like services later on. I should also mention Tursa. Tursa is slightly different in that it funds a different community. This is part of what's called the DRAC service. DRAC has a number of machines across the UK, CPU type clusters, GPU clusters. The one that we operate is a very large GPU based system. And it's funded to support STFC science, so scientists in doing particle physics, astronomy, cosmology, this kind of aspect. And the last service I was going to talk about that's current is the Edinburgh International Data Facility. Now, to call it a service isn't fair. It's lots of services combined. So you can access different services, some which are GPU, some of which are CPU clusters. I am looking at doing data and analytics. I picked out on one of the most recent ones, or quite an interesting system, is the Cerebrus system. This is a purpose-built system for artificial intelligence, and we have one of the first deployments of this, or of a research-based one in the UK. Okay, so I guess the question then is what's coming next? We have, as I showed in my previous slides, we've had an awful lot of services throughout the UK. The UK's been good at supporting high performance computing and supporting computational science. Those of you from around the UK will know that Edinburgh was announced as the host for the next one, and then that was taken away when the government changed. So we were relieved that in July 2025, the new government announced that we would be hosting that service. So it came back. It's part of the UK's compute roadmap, which was published in July 2025. The next national supercomputing service will have up to £750 million worth of investment. You will see if you look around, you can find that there's now details as to what that actually involves, that the actual budget for hardware is around 300 to 330 million pounds. And the plan is, so they say, is for it to be operational from September 2026 to the 31st of August. That is really optimistic. This is actually taken from the website there's an expression of interest out for vendors at the moment, and there'll be a series of meetings at Supercomputing, which is out in the States in November. I will go back to the fact that Archer 2 is due to finish on the 22nd of November 2026. I'll say it's a personal opinion, but personal opinion is that this machine will not be in place until, mid 2027. So there is a potential gap there in service. I know there's a fair amount of discussion going on as to what happens there, and hopefully there won't be a gap, but that could be a real issue. It will be based at CR4. So I mentioned before that we had this extra compute room. As you can see, we're expanding it to accommodate this machine. It's just adding on at the end. Another difference from the Archer 2 service is it brings all the research councils together. So this machine will support science across all of the research councils in the UK, not just NERC and EPSRC. And it's also designed to support simulations that can use most or all of the machine. That's always been the case, but it really will be looking for users to be pushing, really needing that level of resource. So it fits within the UK Compute Roadmap's aim of having a world-class compute ecosystem. So we've got the next, what they're calling the next national supercomputing service. The roadmap also has a plan to create a number of national supercomputing centres, and we've been announced as the first of these. That will hopefully provide some continuity, because one of the things in the UK is that we're always competing for the next national service. So you're competing against colleagues across the UK. Other countries, if you take, for example, Germany, they have 2 or 3 large computing centres, and the machines are spread around those centres, and they're able to work together and provide a more sustainable infrastructure, I think. This also means, for example, that we can be involved in the procurement, as previously, because we were bidding for other aspects of it, we couldn't be involved in the selection of the hardware, which reduces your ability to use people who've been running the services. So there will be a number of national supercomputing centres, but we're the first one to be named. In addition to the money for the next national supercomputing service, there will also be extra resource for what's called AIR or AIRR, which are the AI specific machines. So the big one here is at the University of Bristol and at Cambridge. So Isambard AI and Dawn make up AIR at the moment, but quote unquote, it will have a 20-fold expansion in this programme. So we'll see as and when that transpires. And the last point is that the UKRI are also investing in a series of national compute resources, which I'll mention just now. That slide going here. So these are the plan is for UKRI to invest in a series of systems called NCRs. These are what they describe as an evolution of the tier 2 services. So they're shying away from using the word tier 2 because they're not simply systems that are slightly smaller. They're meant to accommodate particular user groups or particular communities and fit within the ecosystem. This has already been announced. There's a competition that is open or actually closed at the end of October to provide the phase 1 of these machines. And they've just recently put out an expression of interest for people to have the next phase of them. So this does mean that for those that maybe aren't looking to use a very large GPU-based system, there is opportunities to have access to a broader range of systems such as CPU-based systems. And it's worth noting as well that EPSRC are planning on having at least one of these services focused entirely for EPSRC-based scientists. The picture I had before was just an interesting one. It shows you the different resources that are available around the UK just now. So I mentioned Bristol and Cambridge, and there's obviously us, but there's a whole series of resources in other locations, such as Daresbury and Durham or another one of the big ones. So, and then we have systems that are specific, such as the one at the Met Office and the one at AWE. So there's a wide variety of resources across the UK. Okay, so I think that's a bit of a summary. I think it's worth noting the UK has been investing in HPC resources for a very long time. At Edinburgh, we've gradually grown the ACF to accommodate these resources, and it's growing again for the next national supercomputing service. I've noted that there is likely to be a gap between, or there is currently a gap between Archer 2 and the next national supercomputing service. And that there's also going to be an expansion of the AI resources, and there will be these next level of tier 2 style resources across the UK. So hopefully it's certainly a much more promising picture than it was 9 months ago, and we are actually seeing things beginning to be published and procurements to take off. Okay, that's me.
Yeah, maybe there's some questions. Yeah.
I'm just curious. So when they announced, so obviously there was this announcement from new government. It's put on pause or even what changed in practice? And is the arrangement different now compared to what it was with the previous government? Or
It's actually a very similar level of funding. I mean, I think it's just politics. And there was a fair amount of work went on behind the scenes to, to bring it back. But it seemed, I mean, the argument was that the money wasn't actually there. It had been promised, but hadn't been allocated.
there was also this political argument that it's not AI enough or something like that. I heard that. That's just complete.
That seems to have been addressed, yeah, that not everything is AI now, but the use of the air systems is very much driven by, you have to be doing artificial intelligence to use them.
You mentioned that personally you think there probably will be a gap.
So that was not fair. I mean, I think they have to do it, and they'll either extend Archer 2 or they will bring in a small system to tide it over. That may well come down to who wins the procurement. If you can imagine, if HPE win the procurement for the next service, then it's in their interest to keep Archer 2 going at a relatively low cost. If they lose it, there's not really an incentive for them to keep it running. But so we shall see. But there's no concrete information. And at the last Archer 2 management board, we did discuss what we would do if there was the gap. So, for example, some kind of lifeboat in terms of storing people's data for that period, which isn't great, but
Thank you.
Sorry, just out of interest, is it possible to apply for time on the Cerebra wafer?
yes. So it's part of the Edinburgh International Data Facility, which is the one I know least about in terms of access, but you can apply for access on that. So I don't see why not. If you give me your details, I'll follow up and find out for you. It's quite a fun system.
Yeah, we had the talk about.
Danny actually was this a little bit.
And some people went there.
Could we do toured visits to this? I don't want to.
We do actually do tours for collaborators. So we can only take a maximum of 8 people round at a time. But I can arrange tours if people are interested.
Cool way to put Archer 2 in the acknowledgements. Just have your picture with.
Sorry?
It's a cool way to put Archer 2 in the acknowledgement sections with your picture and your.
Yeah, true. We're quite careful about letting people use their phones around the site, although we do tend to let people take a selfie in front of Archer 2. We're actually worried about not showing too much of how the site's orientated. So we're careful on that.
All right, then let's thank Lorna Smith again. We have a reception planned for